Dancing like nobody's watching.
Like, if I'm just dancing and nobody's watching.
Feeling yourself, and you're just dancing like nobody's watching.
Underrated. I feel like I should do it more.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PsychoActivision Presents. I'm your host, Peter Strickland, and we've got another great interview for you today. Before we get started, I wanted to ask that if you're watching on YouTube, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. And you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at PsychoActivision. For today's guest, I've got an old friend from college who I've mostly known as an actor and a musician, but he's kind of been throwing all sorts of surprises out there in the past few years because he's got an online Call of Cthulhu show on YouTube and Twitch called Spot Hidden. And that's probably mostly what we're going to talk about today, but also reminisce and, have some good times. Excuse me. He is a 4-time Grammy nominee and the 6th cousin twice removed of L. Ron Hubbard. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Hudson Hubbard.
Thank you.
If you want to know if any of that stuff's true, you got to watch the rest of the episode. So here we go.
Yes. Lord L. Ron Hubbard from Rivendell, from Middle Earth, yes.
Yeah, there you go. How's it going, dude? It's been a few years since I guess it's been since before the pandemic that we actually connected.
That's right. I guess it would have been 2018, 2019 was probably the last time. But yeah, no, everything's going well. Just working. Just like you, working on our own stuff, just trying to make content. And yeah, we've been doing a podcast, Spot Hidden.
I was going to ask you kind of exactly how you would categorize it, because I've noticed something over the past few years that Twitch has changed a lot. You guys, would you say Twitch is how you primarily do things? Or,
right.
Twitch has changed a lot, because whenever I was in college, it seemed like it was mostly video game, just people streaming while they're gaming, or maybe giving advice on that. But now there's a weird gray area between what's a Twitch stream and what's a podcast, and what's because any kind of long form content online is kind of labeled in that it's like a podcast. So how do you describe Spot Hidden to people if they're just I have no idea what that is, when you first introduce it to them?
So the way myself, London, and Matt describe it, it's a podcast TV show.
Yeah.
And so we don't really rely too heavily on it being a game, even though we are playing a game. But because we are actors, voice actors, we come from that background. So when we're using the material, we're focused on the characters that we've created and the story that we're trying to tell. And so we still are using the game to continue the story, progress the story, but it's not so much as if we miss a rule or something, we stop and go, oh wait, that's not right. We need to, redo that. It's more of, especially me, because right now I'm hosting the show. So me and London have started the 5th campaign. We started, I think, August or September. London finished his 6 episodes, and then I picked up with the part 2 of this campaign. And so right now I'm telling my part of the story. And so I know there's about 2 episodes ago, something happened in one of the scenes where they get ambushed by these mercenary warriors. And London's character actually got hit very hard with a sword, and he almost died.
Okay.
And so for me, as the storyteller in that moment, I wanted his character to continue, and so he was badly wounded, even though the gameplay and the format would probably say otherwise. He was probably dead, and he would need to rewrite another character. But I made the executive decision to say, no, you've just been badly wounded, and you're out of combat for right now. So yeah, it's very fun,
So I guess what you're saying is it's you guys aren't taking it, you're taking it seriously in terms of you want to present a good show, but at the same time you're kind of we're not going to make it. You want it to be fun. I mean that because no one's going to watch it if they're I doubt there's someone out there who's well, they followed all the rules, but I didn't laugh or have a good time at all this episode. Right. They would rather enjoy themselves a little bit or watch you guys enjoy yourselves.
Right. Yeah. So we tend to have a few drinks while we're playing. The first half is usually, the first 5 minutes, I should say, is pretty serious. And then after that 5 minutes, there's jokes being cracked.
Yeah.
Characters tripping over bananas or something like that, So we definitely don't try to take it too serious, but there are very strange moments where something happens within the story and it does lend itself to being serious, and everybody respects that, and you kind of have this kind of natural moment where you're kind of like feeling like, whoa, we just made this kind of piece of the story just out of nowhere. It was naturally formed and it kind of felt good, and then 5 minutes after that we'll be cracking up jokes again.
Well, I feel like that's a natural kind of ebb and flow that that's kind of how I enjoy any piece of art, is that these days at least, I don't really want it to be too serious or too silly. I want something kind of in between, or, a good mixture of different things. But I kind of want to know a little bit about, did you see other shows that were like this? And did you kind of like follow their format, or was it something where because I'm not super familiar with that genre of podcasting or just, online content. Is there a lot of stuff like that out there?
There is. So I'm in the same boat as you. I did not really, and I still don't really watch that type of podcast style shows. Because when I play or I'm performing in the RPG setting, I enjoy it, but watching it and listening to it is very difficult sometimes with other podcasts and stuff. Now you have the big one that everybody kind of knows of, Critical Role. Now, Critical Role, they are probably the biggest, safe to say, podcast, TV show out there. Amazon actually picked them up, and they have their own little cartoon show where they've taken some of their older episodes of the games that they played, re-recorded the lines, and put it out as a cartoon Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy. And so that, we've always kind of had that in the back of our mind going, man, that would be kind of cool to have, one day, maybe take some of the older episodes and somehow animate, re-record, a lot of the dialogue, and just have that. But yeah, so originally, COVID hit in 2020, as we all know, and I was stuck at home, London was stuck at home. And so London had actually hit me up and said, hey, I'm going to be on Zoom later playing Call of Cthulhu with 2 friends. Do you want to join? And I was like, I've never played Call of Cthulhu. And me and London had played D&D, which is kind of the big RPG that everybody knows of, Dungeons and Dragons. We played that in college with Dylan Renfro. You remember Dylan? And that was the first time I was kind of exposed to that type of gameplay, that format. And so I was like, wow, this is, very cool. When I first heard about D&D, I was kind of like, nah, I'm a nerd, but I ain't no super nerd,
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure there are people out there who'd say, otherwise.
I think Stranger Things made it popular again in the modern world, which, I mean, that's a good and bad thing. It's probably like an oversaturation for a little while whenever Stranger Things has a new season, but at the same time, you'd rather it be more popular, so...
So I went in with kind of open mind when I was playing with London and Dylan in college, and I had a blast because you get to create your own character, somebody else is, visually describing the scene, the landscape, we consider it theater of the mind. And so I fell in love with it. And then after college, there was like a year I hadn't played, but then London called me up and was like, hey, you want to play this? And I'd never heard of Call of Cthulhu. I've heard of H.P. Lovecraft and his work before, but I'd never played any Call of Cthulhu style games. And so I jumped on with him and we played, and I fell in love with it so Call of Cthulhu's RPG format is more heavy on the role-playing aspect, and there is the gameplay, but there's more role-playing that is required, whereas in D&D there's more gameplay mechanics. When you get into combat, it could take an hour or two to get out of that. And so we continued to play on Zoom for a very long time, for a couple of months. And then me and London were talking. And at this point, Matt had joined us. And so we're all three talking. And we were like, man, it'd be kind of cool if we could, put this out there, maybe just stream it on YouTube or Twitch, something like that. And so we kind of said, all right, let's do it, and then we came up with the name Spot Hidden. And so in Call of Cthulhu, the game by Chaosium, there is a roll that you have to make. If your character wants to look around and try to find something, if you're looking for a clue, you need to roll a Spot Hidden.
Okay.
And so that's where we get the name from. And we found a design that we liked, and we went with it. And so we started our own Instagram page, started throwing our socials out there, telling people, hey, we're going to go live with our first episode on this day, tune in, join us. Well, we got a call, London got a call from Chaosium, who makes the game. Yeah. And said, hey, we would like to do sort of a partnership with you guys. We're not, it's not a paid partnership or anything, but we'd love to, throw you out there, let everybody know what you're doing and stuff. We can give you some merchandise to give out in the streams and stuff. And we were like, yeah, definitely. So we're always in talks with Chaosium. They help us out, we help them out. And so we started off that first episode really strong, and then ever since we've just kept on going with different stories. We're in our 5th campaign now, and we do one-shots, and we've been on other people's podcasts and shows. I was lucky enough back in April to get a call from Modifius. They're the other kind of, not sister, but they're just another game company, big like Chaosium. And they had hit me up and said, hey, do you want to run a 2-episode campaign on our channel, or our Twitch channel, doing Achtung Cthulhu. And Achtung Cthulhu is more my speed because it's Call of Cthulhu set in World War II.
Oh, yes. Interesting. So, nice.
So I got to do that. And it was very fun because I didn't know at the time, but London told me that the people that I was working with were very big people in that industry. So that was kind of a big thing. There was a voice actor who had worked on multiple DC cartoon stuff. So I work with them, get to talk to them,
That's awesome.
Dig and dissect their brains, ask them their opinions on stuff. That was fun,
So let me ask you then, because, since the last time we hung out and since the last time we really saw each other and spent much time together, things have kind of changed in the world, but also, this is an industry, or it's like a world, a community that you probably weren't really aware of before. So let me ask you then, because I think, if I've known you well enough over the past few years, I know, about your interests, that you would describe yourself as like a nerd, that you like, things like Star Wars or fantasy, things like that. But it seemed to me like, back in college, you had a lot of an interest in, in mostly, I guess, being like an actor, because that's what we were studying. And then now that you kind of see this world, though, let me ask you this, if you were given the choice, they had the same, pay and things like that, if you found out you had a steady gig as acting in a TV show or something, as opposed to being able to do a show like you're doing now and getting paid the same, where's your passion lie these days? What are you most interested in? And you can say that you're interested in everything, but I guess I'm just curious to know if your mind has changed over the years, and if you're more actually this online stuff is kind of cool. It's easy to do because you're at home, and I'm just kind of curious to know where you kind of want to go, next, or what your desires and dreams are in that way.
My mind has definitely changed.
Yeah.
Since college. I'll give you the honest truth.
Hit me.
So after college, I was not feeling it. I was wiped out. I did not have motivation. I just was not feeling it, and so, because I just felt like I had worked a lot in those 4 years, and then it was just I needed a break. And I think me as an artist, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who have felt the same way, but it's, as an artist, sometimes you need to rest that muscle, And so I took a break, and I wanted it to be like a couple of months. And I did it for a couple of months, tried to get back into it, still was not motivated. And then a year went by, and then COVID hit, and I was still kind of not motivated to pursue, film or stage acting, but we were doing spot hidden, and I still felt like, this is me being able to, still use that muscle, but just in a different way. And I really felt like, and still feel like with spot hidden, because with spot hidden, I really feel like it's, all three of us and whoever else is with us at the time. It's us making our own work, just like you're doing right now. And that is where my mind is right now, is making my own work. Because, for 4 years, it was a lot of, going to auditions. There weren't big cattle calls, but, it was a lot of, when you graduate, you're going to be doing a lot of cattle calls, And there are a lot of people who graduate and are very lucky, and I'm very proud of them, very happy for them, and they've done a lot of good stuff, But I was not ready to go and do cattle calls. And that might seem selfish, I don't know, but that was just the honest truth. I was very tired, and I honestly also did not feel good with my performances that last year. I felt like I was so tired that a lot of the characters that I was playing, I was just kind of half-assing. Am I allowed to cuss on here?
You can say whatever you want.
So I didn't feel good about it, and so I just wanted to take a break to rest that muscle, but also kind of refine and try to find a new version of my skill that I could use. And me and you were in a lot of, shows together. Antigone, Civil War Christmas. And I was trying to remember Frankenstein.
Because that's when we first kind of met and kind of started to become friends. Because we were in a lot of scenes together.
Right. Yeah. Right. Were you in Mr. Burns?
I played drums in Mr. Burns.
The drums. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I loved that show. And I thought it was a great production. That was like probably some of the most fun I had on a show. But it, for some reason that one was weird for me. I think it was because it happened in like April of my senior year. And I was like, I remember being backstage during like a show and having to start, like, I was going through emails where it was like, you're about to graduate, here's your student loan information. And I was like, fuck, I just want to think about the show, but I'm back here, it's like, or, it was shit like that where that I feel like any show you do your last semester of college, you're kind of like, your brain is in a million other places. Cause like at the time, from probably like February through, all of the summer, I was still, applying for internships and all that kind of thing. But anyway, Mr. Burns was really fun. I liked that show a lot. I think it's one of my favorite like scripts that I've ever, been able to be involved with on a whole production level. Yeah,
it was definitely an interesting show.
Can we just, and this is not me trying to, this is not anything personal against anybody. Not that anybody fucking watches this, but I just say,
I watch it.
I think Antigone had to have been my least favorite experience of any play I was in college, really. Mostly just because I could almost feel the audience just like losing their attention span during it. I just don't think that it, like, personally, I think if you're going to do Greek theater or Shakespearean theater in today's world, you have to do it in some kind of way that, like, it doesn't have to be gimmicky, but, like, I felt like ours was very, even though it was trying to be different, I was like, this feels very, I don't know, it was just kind of, like, bland. I don't know how else to put it. And it wasn't anybody's acting's fault. It was, like, mostly I was like, I just don't think this is a very interesting story. It's like, it's so much talking. Like, at least with Oedipus Rex, there's like action. It's like fucked up action, but there's action. And then Antigone was just like half the play was just London and Kaylee, doing monologue after monologue at each other, and I was like, there's no way the audience is like engaged with this based on the text, not based on the acting. The acting was great. It was just, that's how I felt about it. So
that's right. They did have like an hour-long scene.
It was.
We're all in the back.
We literally just went to the back and talked and fucked around because I had like maybe 2 lines, so I was like, it's not like I'm gonna get out of character for this, But right. I think if I'm laying it all on the table, because I'm willing to be honest about this, and I know a lot of people. I've met people who graduated. I don't think that, and I went to 2 different schools, so like I can compare theater programs at least. The school that I started at for college was a lot smaller than Auburn. Mm-hmm. Auburn's theater program, I did not think prepared me for the practicality of what trying to get a career in theater after college was. It was a lot of like idealistic situations. It was like, well, if you're working on this show, you're gonna want this and this, and I'm like, half the time in my professional experience, half the time it was almost impossible just to get your foot in the door for auditions. They wanted you, like when I was living in Atlanta, I remember trying to get auditions at places, and in order for me just to get auditions or even considered to be on a list for an audition, because I wasn't like a well-known actor there or anything, I was just like a cattle call kind of thing. I had to basically like volunteer to work there and build their sets or, and all this stuff. I was even offered an internship in Atlanta one time, at Actors Express. It was weird because like I the year I graduated, I auditioned for that internship and I really wanted it because I was moving to Atlanta and I was like, I need something as like a backbone of like creative stuff to do. But dude, those internships are so exploitative because literally what I did not realize whenever I first was like really wanting to do it is how much time they require out of you. Because literally they're like, it's about 40 hours a week unpaid. And the most you really get out of it is that you get to be an understudy for one show. Mm-hmm. As in throughout the whole school year that you are like an intern, there's one show you get to be an understudy and you maybe get one performance in front of people. And it's like probably like a, not even paid performance or something. It's like something like that. That was basically what I remember. The year that I didn't get it, I was like, man, this sucks. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Following year, I had been in Atlanta for a year. I auditioned for it again and I got offered it. And then I looked at I was like, oh, I'm already like killing myself working a 40-hour week job just to pay my bills. So I'm going to add another 40-hour week job that I don't even get paid at. And I barely even get any. And then and they would try to tell you well, you get to take classes. And I'm like, I took classes in college, and I can just, anyway, it's one of those things where I feel like theater as a whole is like the complete opposite of the film industry, where the film industry, there's a lot of people who are making money for no reason, a lot of money for no reason. The theater industry, there's a lot of people who deserve to make at least something, and they're making not shit. But anyway, I just had a lot of, here's my point. Going to Auburn, towards the end, when I was really trying to get like practical advice and like instruction from my professors, half of them hadn't even worked in the professional world. So they didn't understand and half of them were making $75,000 to $100,000 or more. So they didn't understand, how hard it is to move with no money to a city like Atlanta or New York or anywhere and try to work and pay your bills and then also maybe audition for like a play. I got fucking tired of it. So I haven't been in a play in years, and it's one of those things where I'm just like, I love theater, but on a basically in a cerebral way, not in like a practical way. Because anytime that I've been involved in a play as like a professional, I've been exploited, I've been underpaid, I've been it's not worth your time, and, is what it seems. But so many people do it because they love it. And that happens in the film industry too, where some, I've been exploited in the film industry too, but they have more of a precedent of like, if you're showing up here, I got to pay you, and anyway, that's just my experience. Did any of that ring true for you?
I agree with you 100%. I mean, yeah, I'm so very glad that we're doing this because I'm glad we share the same opinions also. And I'm sure there's other people out there who feel the same way, because it's just, we went there for 4 years, we gave it our all. And there's a lot of us who have come out of it very tired, unmotivated, or they are motivated, but they have no idea where to go because it's this big, big world.
Yeah.
And so, and back to your question. So like, I I went to Atlanta to look around, try to see if I could rent or purchase, somewhere, and I just could not find anywhere because it's just very expensive, and I also didn't have a job at the time up there. So I bought a place here in Auburn and I've been there for about 2 years now. And, I love it and everything. But so we're trying to go back to the question. So,
well, I was going to say, if you want me to, I can chime in for a second. I was going to say, I love the modern world we live in, that the internet, even though it is oversaturated, it's an accessible place. Because even when, I graduated from college in 2018, and what's crazy is I didn't get into podcasting or making my own online content until closer to 2020, the pandemic. Right. And in general though, I looking back on it, I'm I wish that I had been learning how to do this when I was in school, because this, you can just see the practicality of where something. I know some people are there's some hoity-toity artistic people who are very well, a podcast isn't art. And I'm this is, but here's what it is. It's something that you own, that no one else really has, even if you get sponsored, you're beholden to someone. I love doing this show so much because I can kind of say and do whatever I want, obviously within reason, but because I'm it gets 50 views an episode. So I'm not, but it also, even if it got 1 million views an episode, I would probably just run it the way I want to run it, because there's no one who's telling me, oh, I don't like this or that. And, I would take criticism, but I guess in general, I just got tired of the film industry and theater. You need so many resources and so many people to make it work. If you want to audition for a play, you're just a tiny piece in that. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's 2 people in this room, and it's so nice. I'm not interesting enough to be on a podcast by myself, but you only need one person to do a podcast. So I love online content in that way. I even love what's happening now in I'm a huge comedy fan. I watch a lot of comedy podcasts and just stand-up specials and things like that. What's happening in the world of comedy these days, I love, where comedians who have worked on who people are really, really who have worked on, content for 5 to 10 years, but no one, Netflix and Hulu haven't given them money for a special and all that. Right. They've started to just be okay, I'll save up money over several years, and then they'll save up $20,000 to $40,000 and spend that on getting professional videographers to film at a nice venue. And they have to cut some corners here and there to make it look like a professional thing the way they would if they had Netflix's money. But at the same time, these days, it's pretty affordable. You can even do it for less money than that. Put together a comedy special or a short film or something. And actually, that's something that I'll throw out there. Since we both live in Auburn now, I've had the bug to write and create short films, because really I'm a movie guy.
Done.
Let's do it. Well, I'm happy to hear that someone else, is trying to do that kind of thing. For whatever reason, I'm not even saying dramatic, cinematic films. I just have some kind of thing in me that's I don't want to make I want to make something that's a little more refined than TikTok content, mm-hmm. but is not as not so highbrow or cinematic that it's unaccessible. I kind of I've seen some comedians who they'll make a funny short film that's 10 minutes long, put it on YouTube, and then it's a way for them to showcase what they do, but also to be go watch my podcast, go catch me on the road. It's it's a way to promote every other thing that they're doing. I just love the idea that people are putting out movies, TV specials, and even a podcast is its own, it's a talk show. So,
right.
Anyway, have you been kind of like that over the past few years though? It sounds like you agree with me that you're just make your own content. That's what you need to do.
Yes, so that's where my mind is making my own content and how to go about that. But so back through going through the years, so I finally just a couple of months ago got my motivation back to begin to start trying to pursue the other avenues of acting that I was pursuing back in college and before that. Because that's, who I am as an artist. I will always be an entertainer or an actor. And so I finally get that motivation, so I'm trying to pursue it through voice acting and whatever else that is, but I'm still wanting it to be making my own content. And I'm very glad that you're here because we could, possibly do that, But yeah, no, it's just, I really, there's so much good stuff out there right now, especially ever since COVID hit. A lot of people have turned away from, going to the theaters, which is very sad because I'm a huge theater guy. I love to go to the theater and watch a movie. But a lot of the movies that are coming out today, big Hollywood movies, they're not doing well in the box office. They're taking huge hits and it's not good. But a lot of people are going to YouTube and Twitch sometimes to watch people make their own content. And I think that's where it is now because we do have the technology, to make your own small little short film.
Yeah.
And there's film festivals out there that love people to bring in, their 15-minute, 30-minute, movies and, show them off, showcase them. And I honestly wish there was more of that kind of scene in Alabama because I know, Atlanta's like the sister to Hollywood, now.
There's definitely a lot more indie filmmaking there, but I was going to say Birmingham has something called like the Sidewalk Film Fest or something they do every year that like, I think that's like some more local content, but you're right, Atlanta has like, it's crazy all the different stuff they had. It would be like, like I remember one time when I saw that they had like a Jewish film festival in Atlanta. I was like, specifically those, like I think it's maybe for like Jewish directors or subjects around Judaism, and I was like, that's crazy that that's an entire film festival in Atlanta because you just kind of like maybe you would expect that in like New York or LA or something, but it's dude. I really like the fact that it is so accessible. But let's talk about saturation then. I hate the fact that like if I had started this podcast, 10 years ago, which is crazy. I actually would have been old enough. I would have been like a freshman in high school. I could have done that. I mean, not high school, college. But it would have stood out a little bit more because there just wasn't so much stuff out there. And these days, I feel like there's some podcasts that don't really need to exist. Right. And let me like for example, let me tell you, I used to work at a company in Atlanta that was a sporting goods company, and they were okay to work for, but some of their content was just, it was marketing for their products veiled as like information that you needed as like, because it was a sporting goods company. They did a lot of tennis stuff. They had a podcast called like Tennis Talks or something where it was like, an hour podcast where they're just kind of like, the only episodes that were worth anything to me were the ones where they would interview like Roger Federer or like an actual tennis player. But the rest of the episodes, it was just like 3 or 4 people who work there who are tennis players who were just kind of like talking about a new product and stuff. And I was like, who wants to, but people are listening, I guess. But my point is, I'm kind of like, this is just marketing. It's just a way to get people to buy that product from them. It's not really like, I would appreciate content like that a little bit more if it's like a tennis person who's not looking for like to make money off of it. They're just like, let me tell you about why I love this thing. Because there are videographers who do that with cameras all the time that they even say like, I'm not getting paid. I just love this camera. Let me show you about it. But I don't know. Do you feel that way though? Do you get a little overwhelmed by just the fact that it's like the online world is a bit, it's kind of hard because there's not like a centralization of anything anymore. It's like so scattered.
Well, so I'll speak from kind of the RPG podcast background that I have now, I guess. Yeah. We do notice now that, after we started and a couple other people started during that time period, that there has been kind of an increase of podcasts to start and, do the same kind of, Call of Cthulhu or Dungeons and Dragons, Octung. There's hundreds of other RPGs out there now that are just keep coming out.
Yeah.
And I think really, what we talked about earlier, having that serious comedy, duality to keep, people interested.
Yeah.
It definitely is required for something like that. And there's, God bless them, but there are some out there who keep on going, keep trying it. Because we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I get it. Sometimes you need that bad example though, and you're not trying to. you're not trying to be like a hater, but you're also trying to be like, this makes me feel better about my podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But and there's a lot of good people out there that are doing it because they love it, and there's also the people who are doing it because they love to play the game.
Yeah.
And so they're not worried about the story or the characters. They want to play the game that Chaosium has created. And I wouldn't say the opposite, but we're taking the game that Chaosium has created, but we're more worried about the story that we want to tell, that we've come up with, just ourselves, So it's definitely, I don't want to say saturated in that kind of area of podcast, but I would say there are a lot of podcasts out there now for a lot of different things. And I'm very guilty of listening to a variety of different podcasts these days, more than watching movies and stuff. And
dude, well, you know why I think that is? Like, I listen to so many more podcasts now than I ever did. I mean, than I ever watched movies, because I can put my headphone in and walk away from my phone or whatever it's playing on, and I don't have to. I can listen to it for a minute, come back. I didn't really miss anything. Although I will say every now and then there's podcasts where they're very video heavy, where it's like they play videos and they react to them or something, or they're doing things on screen. For those podcasts, though, I wonder, like, how do you guys get any audio listeners? Because, like, like one of my favorite comedy podcasts is Your Mom's House with Tom Segura and his wife Christina P. And they, I don't really watch it all the time these days because it's really long. It's like sometimes like 3 hours, but I used to listen to it at work, and it sucked because they would play videos like from YouTube and TikTok and react to them, like funny videos. And so for years, I would be at work listening, and I would just hear these funny like bits of audio. And eventually I would see the person in the video and I'd be like, that's not how I pictured them at all. So point being, podcasting is weird because it started out as an audio format, and some people are like, that's what it's really supposed to be. And I'm like, I think video makes it enriches it. That's what I am as a video person. So like the audio is kind of secondary, honestly, but for me.
When we were talking about, doing the show live and stuff with Spot Hidden, that was one of our goals that we kind of had a dream of, maybe one day being able to, enhance it to where it's a new kind of entertainment format.
Yeah.
Because that's something I would love, because I feel like, in my personal opinion, Hollywood, what they're putting out these days, they do have their kind of golden goose that does come out from time to time, and it's like, wow, that was great. But then there's so much of, and I'm sure there's people out there that's going to be like, Hudson, what are you talking about? You love those movies, but Marvel and Star Wars.
See, I was hoping, dude, that is an oversaturated market. Like
very.
Well, and you're a fan. I mean, like, I'm a fan generally of Star Wars. I gotta say, I have never seen a Marvel movie all the way through because, on a personal level, it's not. I'm just not interested in superhero stuff. But eventually, I've heard people like you, like my family loves the Marvel movies, but eventually they were like, I'm kind of tired of them. Because like there's just so many. Right. And they don't seem like they're ready to stop. Like they just want to keep making them.
Going.
Yeah.
And so like in 2019, we got Endgame. And that was the big climactic, Infinity Saga. It was coming to a close and it closed. And so that to me was Marvel's, epic climax plus, the... I guess it'd be epilogue,
the denouement.
And so, where do you go from there? You know, it's like if you got 30 more stories to tell, you got 2 more big villains, I guess, in the Marvel universe that can top Thanos, who is the big one in that saga, and now he's gone, and there's the multiverse, so can they bring him back? It's just all that, and it's kind of like, I get it, it's a comic book, there's thousands and thousands of Marvel comic books that do that, but it's just at some point you got to go, I want something new, and that's also where I'm at. I want something new and refreshing, and I love what A24 has been doing. A24 has been coming out with like a lot of cool stuff.
They're very, and they can become experimental while also being like having, I mean, it's experimental, but not like weird and, like H24 made Lady Bird, right? I think they did.
I don't know if they did Lady Bird. I know they did The Witch.
The Witch is great. Oh my God, Midsummer is like the absolute like the scariest movie I've ever seen.
The Green Knight. They've done
they had
Hereditary.
I haven't seen that, but I wanted to. They had one that came out with Pete Davidson a few months ago that I wanted to see, where it looks like people are at a house party and someone keeps like killing people or something. It's like they're like, you know, it's like a crazy house party where they're like jumping in the pool and drinking and stuff. But I can't remember what it's called, but that one looked pretty good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I heard a comparison on a podcast recently that I didn't even think about, but it's like a good comparison. Marvel movies in our modern era it's the same kind of like oversaturation of those that Westerns were in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, when you look at the 60s, you're like, why did they make so many of the same movie? Like, they all kind of are the same. And there's a few good ones that stand out, but like, so many of those Clint Eastwood movies, I'm like, you could have made that, like, those 3 movies into one, and it would have been, you know, but...
Well, yeah, and The Man with No Name. Those 3, to me, are some of the best Western films. Now, I understand, like, the serial kind of Western TV shows, you know, those...
There were so many.
Yes, and I mean, they were very oversaturated, you know, and if you look at the time period of when those came out, you know, there's a reason, you know, for those style, you know... It was after World War II, you know, you have a lot of young boys who are seeing their fathers, you know, come home from war, and they want to also experience that adventure that they kind of hear their dad talking about.
It was probably also easy to make, like, I think that if you had one Western, like, desert background, it looked the same in all of them. So I feel like it was probably easy in a studio to just, like, you know, roll those things out, because they're like, well, we don't really have, like... We're going to use this chase scene from, you know, the same set from this one as in this one, because we just like change a couple, throw a couple more, what do you call it, tumbleweeds in there, and we got it, you know, but...
Put that cactus over there.
There were some good movies, there were some like random ones in the 60s, like the only movie that Marlon Brando ever directed was One-Eyed Jacks, which is like a Western from like 1965 or something, and... It's a pretty good movie, but like there's a couple spots in it where you're kind of like, I feel like he definitely directed this, because it's a little more weird or experimental. There's like shots of just like an ocean wave like hitting over and over, and you're like, okay, I think I'm thinking about the right movie. But anyway.
That's funny, because the last character that I voiced on Spot Hidden, I based it off of Marlon Brando. So I've been watching and listening to Marlon Brando a lot lately.
Have you ever seen Robin Williams do his impression of Marlon Brando?
Yeah.
It's great, yeah. I watched a documentary on Hulu about Robin Williams not that long ago. I don't know if I finished it, but it was really good because they mostly used audio from him in interviews as like the narration. So as they're going through, they'll have like a person talking about him and like shots of him from that era. And then it'll be like him answering an interview question, and it like perfectly lines up with how they're telling the story of his life. But he's one of those people that it's so strange, you know, what ended up happening with him near the end of his life, because so many people close to him were like, yeah, I mean, everybody has depression, but like he seemed fine. But, you know, that's just what happens, I guess. Let's transition a little bit. Sorry, it's a little depressing.
No.
Do you still, I mean, I'm assuming you still play drums and, you know, I mean, maybe not like in a band, but like you still play for fun?
I don't have room for my drums, so I have not played in almost 2 years now.
Wow.
So, but I still air drum from time to time. My leg still goes, you know, for the bass drum.
Were you ever one of those people, did you drum when you were pretty young, like in middle school or high school? Because I would get people getting on to me all the time, because I'd be sitting in class and I'd be thinking of a song and I'd just be like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
I would do the...
Stop.
Yeah. And so... I mean, it's still there. I need the room to get it all
dude, I get it.
Because you know me, I love Neil Peart, so my drum set was that.
R.I.P.
Yeah, yes.
He's great, but yeah, there were times where I was like, do you need all that? I mean, he probably does, but also, I think Tommy Lee would do that kind of thing too, where he'd have just like, you know, drums all around. Well, I think Tommy Lee had the cage that would like spin him around and stuff.
Well, as Neil Peart, he had the acoustics. And then on the back he had the electrics, you know, and I don't know. It's just, I love Neil Peart.
I'm very impressed though when I see a drummer who literally has just like a bass drum, a snare, and like a crash cymbal or something, and like a hi-hat, and they're like playing some ridiculous stuff, because it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to have all the sounds that, but when someone can take like one drum, like a snare drum, and get, you know, all these different sounds out of it. Like I've seen people who that's all they have, and then they are turning the snares on and off for solos and like, you know, bending the head and stuff. So like it's really cool when, you know, people use simplicity or minimalism as like a positive or a plus.
A lot of jazz musicians can do that very well.
I'm not a really fast drummer, so like I love listening to like I got really into metal over the past few years, and I love listening to someone who can play ridiculous, you know, double bass and tom fills and stuff where I'm like, I can't play that fast at all. But it's just I realize I'm like, I don't think that's who I am. That's just not, my body's not gonna move the way that, because for some people, you listen to them play like a really fast lick and you're like, how did your body even move fast enough for you to do that? This is probably a good transition period. I want to play a game. I've got
cool, yeah.
Let's do it.
Call of Cthulhu.
The next 3 hours. Are you're familiar with Pitchfork, the website, the music review website?
I don't think so.
So like they're a little pretentious. I don't love them these days. I used to. Pitchfork is they're like an online music review site. They mainly review like indie music, but it's kind of turned into a very they also rate albums, and they'll be like, there's all these albums where they're like, this one gets a 10 out of 10, and you're like, really? Like, why would you rate it perfectly? But then they're, you know, anyway, they're pretentious. But one thing I like that they used to do is they would do these video segments with artists called Over Under, and so that's what we're gonna play today is Over Under. And what it is I will give you something, whether it's just like one word or a scenario or something, and then you have to tell me if it's overrated or underrated. And those are your only two options. So it's no, you know, don't be a wimp and be like, it's rated perfectly fine. Just, you know, is it overrated or is it underrated? And a short explanation why. You know, if you can just sometimes be like, because that's how I feel. But I don't know. But I think it makes it more fun if you explain a little bit.
All right.
So, Over Under with Mr. Hudson Hubbard. Here we go. Number 1, going to the beach.
Overrated.
Why?
Everybody does it.
Not people with skin problems. I don't think they do. But,
that's true.
Not vampires.
That's true.
How about e-scooters? Like a bird or a lime, like, you know, like an electric scooter.
Oh,
you know, like in a big city, you rent one and you just like ride it around and then you toss it and.
Oh, overrated.
Why do you feel like so?
Get off the sidewalk.
Well, that's the funny thing. They're technically supposed to ride on the street, but if you ride on the street, then people almost hit you in their car. So it's a no-win situation.
Right.
I have one of those scooters.
Oh, really?
No, but I totally understand. I get it. I know a lot of people who hate them. How about Metallica?
Overrated. Iron Maiden all day, every
I knew
day.
you liked Iron Maiden. See, like, but that's the thing is I was like, so many people would be like, Metallica, they're fucking great, they're underrated. I'm like, you can get a Metallica t-shirt at Target or Walmart. You know, they're like, everybody knows about them.
And what's funny now is because of this past season of Stranger Things, there's so many young girls now who are like, Metallica! And you're like, what?
And then all they know is Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
And I mean, truth be told, I've never done a deep dive on Metallica. I know that they have good music, like if you like metal, especially from that era. But I'm not a huge fan of 80s and 90s metal. Like that's not, you know, so that's just not as much my thing. If I'm gonna listen to metal, it's either gonna be like earlier metal, like 70s kind of stuff, or like 90s and after. For some reason, I don't like the 80s. The hair metal stuff scared, you know,
Yeah.
How about fish tacos?
I'll go with underrated. I'll say underrated because you don't hear a lot of people, I guess, probably around this area, even though we do have good fish taco places, really go, hey, you know, for lunch, I'm going to go have a fish taco. And I'm not really a person who also does that, you know, but they're good. I like them.
I don't think I've ever eaten a fish taco.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think maybe tilapia. Maybe I had that, but Hamilton the musical.
So many people are going to kill me for this, but overrated.
Yes! I was hoping you'd say that. I mean, honestly, give me why. Like, why do you feel? You could probably do like an hour on this, but...
Yeah, no, I've talked to my sister about it because she loves it.
Yeah.
And so...
My wife loves it. She's obsessed.
My personal opinion is, and you know I'm a huge history buff.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch something for historical context, I want it to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
And that's just how I'm always going to have.
Are there liberties taken with this? I mean, I assume there's some, but
it's just, the whole the stylized pieces itself, it's just.
So it's like they're making up situations that might not have actually happened.
Right.
And they're like, because it's like they might not have actually talked to them and said that. Or, I get what you're saying. Yeah. There's not a lot of actual historical evidence to like back up everything in it.
Right.
Probably.
And I'm not saying it's not a good piece of art, but me as a historian or a historical buff, I'm sitting there going like, I'd rather watch, Hamilton on HBO.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm not a fan of the musical theater voice.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's a very perfect kind of sound that like people make their. And Hamilton's annoying because it's people rapping, but they're doing it in the musical theater voice, so it doesn't sound like rapping to me. Right. It's because the musical theater voice is always too articulate, and it's just like, I mean, I'm like, that's not how. Anyway, that's just how I feel. Is that I'm like, I don't think that it. People love it, so good on them. They make money. Pineapple on pizza.
I think underrated. I would say underrated.
Okay. We're on the same wavelength on that. Do you ever order it, or is it just
I don't order it, but I mean, if it's there in front of me and I'm allowed to have a piece, I'll eat it.
You're not allowed to have that. Yeah. Next we have Adam Sandler.
Okay, so I think maybe 2010, I would say overrated.
Yeah.
But now, because of some of the work that's coming out with him, I would say underrated.
Like Uncut Gems?
Uncut Gems. Yeah. He has another one that I just heard about that will be coming out where it's going to be kind of like Uncut Gems, but apparently it's going to be about the trading card society.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
And recently I've gotten into Magic the Gathering, and so I heard that and I was like, okay, I might have to watch that, because it's a very big deal.
Yeah.
Buying and selling those cards, because there's some very pricey ones out there.
It's crazy to me how Magic the Gathering is still like around now, because it like my brother played it in like 2005, and I didn't think it would last, because most games like that haven't really, Even, I mean, Pokemon. It's crazy because I was at like a McDonald's or something a few years ago, and like Pokemon cards were being given as like the toy in a Happy Meal, and I was like, as a kid, I would have, looking back on it, I'm like, they have no value then. Like if they're in a Happy Meal, Right. I remember stores in the mall when I was a kid that were just Pokemon cards. And because it was so popular in the late 90s that they were, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars for some cards. But anyway, playing golf.
Overrated. There's a lot of people around here that play too much golf.
And also, here's how I feel. It's kind of a weird use of resources, because like they always have to make the grass like kind of perfect, and which requires a lot of water, and like that's so much land that I'm always like, well, if there's no one out there, on certain days and everything, I'm just like, I wish I could just like walk it, or I have been on a golf course at night when it was like closed down. It's one of the most fun places to be, because you're just like perfectly manicured, and it's pretty.
Now, I will say that I do play golf.
Okay.
I haven't played in a while, but it is.
For some reason, I thought I remembered that you played golf, so I wasn't sure where that was going to go. But Shrek, like the movie.
The movie, underrated. Underrated. I would say the movie underrated. The musical, everything else, overrated.
I've never seen the musical or heard any music. I feel like I would hate it, though.
I think that very first movie was something else. We were supposed to have Chris Farley voice Shrek.
Really?
Oh yeah. You can go on YouTube and listen to the recordings, because they recorded the whole movie with him.
Did he have the accent though? That
he did not. It was like his voice as Shrek, and so you're sitting there going like, what? And then he passed away, and so they got Mike Myers to come and do it, and Mike Myers didn't want to do anything like what he had voiced. So he was like, I'm going to give him a Scottish dialect. And there we have Shrek.
I think that worked. I mean, it was kind of random, but I think it, the dialects were all over the place in that movie. Because like Lord Farquaad, I think, spoke like with an American, like, it wasn't really British, was it?
It's like American posh accent.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. Like a lot of pick number 3, my lord. It's like that's kind of British, but it's like a really weird, cartoony British. Anyway, last one. Dancing like nobody's watching.
Like, if I'm just dancing and nobody's watching.
Feeling yourself, and you're just dancing like nobody's watching.
Underrated. I feel like I should do it more. I feel like in college we used to do it all the time, and
I don't know. I'm not big on dancing. I love drumming, but I, for whatever reason, am just like, because I think here's what it is. If I was in the right environment where people were letting you actually like be who you are, but half the time it's just like, well, everyone in this room's grinding on each other, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's not my form of dancing, but that's why I didn't like going to dances in high school, was that it was so popular basically to just be like, well, your date's gonna be bent over in front of you during this, this whole like 2 hours of hip hop songs. And I'm like, that's not what I enjoy doing though. That's just, I don't know. It feels like a weird ritual that we used to have, I'm sure they still have it. But anyway, that was just like a fun way to, kind of get your opinions on some stuff so people can get to know the real Hudson.
Yeah. I know over the years, everybody's like, who is that guy? And I'm sure a lot of people after college is like, is he still alive?
I feel that way about some people where I'm like, well, especially, there are people that we knew in college who were, and I guess, maybe I'm not connected with them, but like who were real go-getters and just seemed like they were like always on it. And then I think there's a real disconnect that is like, once you get out of college and you're trying to like get jobs in the real world and everything, it's like, I mean, how many people do we know that it almost seems like, I guess, they're just kind of like not gonna do anything creative again? Or, it's like they're kind of like, and no offense to that, I know it's hard, but, I've known people over the years, not just from Auburn, but like who they get married and they have a kid and they're like, well, I guess I'm just gonna work at this car dealership now and then never try to do like acting or this again. And I'm like, so I think what you and I have been trying to like kind of prove, or, our whole point in this podcast, a lot of what it's been about at least, is that you will, and on a personal level, but on like, I think your career and your professional life will benefit from putting your time and energy into yourself, into like your own passion projects or your own creative projects. I think, today's world is just like one where you can't rely on other people to let you do your art. Like if your art is acting, and that's what you really want to do, you gotta learn how to write or something. Or, because if you don't put together something that is like an expression of who you are, arts like acting are just gonna be, I don't know, it's never really gonna happen. Because unless, and actually I think that's what I was also gonna mention, is that you don't have to live in a big city. You and I live in Auburn, and we're able to do the things that, we really enjoy. Obviously, there's more opportunities to do creative things or live events and all that in a city like Atlanta or, New York or LA or wherever. But I don't know. I mean, everybody take this little piece of advice. Just like put your money on yourself and, invest in your own ideas, because that's really the ones that are going to pay off in the end.
Yeah. I agree again, 100%. So like back to, me gaining my motivation a couple months ago came from me having a couple of nightmares over a couple of periods of time, where in those nightmares I had lost my ability to perform or entertain, or it was years from now and I did not pursue any of it. And so it was that whole kind of mindset, like, I need to get back out there and, still pursue, spot hidden, but also I need to get back out there and do what, I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. I love entertaining people, and I think, also with that, and whatever that entertaining is, me and you are talking and entertaining one another while entertaining an audience, and so I love that. And I think in today's world also, for a lot of artists, especially actors, you hear a lot of people, you go to a family dinner or something, or an outing, and somebody asks you, what do you do? And it's like, oh, I'm an actor. And they're like, oh, so you're, so what have you been in? What movies are you like?
That shit.
It's like, oh, well, no, that's who I am, oh, so you're not a professional actor? It's like, what does that mean to be a professional actor? Like, does that mean I have an IMDb page, I've worked with Sylvester Stallone, I've been paid this amount. To me, Hollywood hasn't existed, that long in all reality, and And so the idea of an actor to me is someone who entertains people. And to say you're a professional actor, I just, in my personal opinion, I don't think that word should even exist. An actor is an actor, no matter if you have an IMDb page or if you have a podcast and you're performing your own, story through a game. Yeah.
Well, it's like I've heard a similar comparison, I guess, with comedians, where some people, if you're an actor who's always acting in comedic roles in like TV, like if you're Kevin James in King of Queens, he's hilarious. He's always, or like Kramer from Seinfeld, like they're hilarious characters on that show. But both of those people tried to do stand up and then didn't really do as well. But then the whole thing is, can I call them a comedian? Because or a comic, because it's like, well, they're not a stand-up comic, but they are a comedian because they make people laugh being in the show and everything. So it's, people want to be like, they're an actor. And it's like, no, well, they're a comedian because they're kind of creating comedy and like making people laugh. I don't know. I mean, I find that, but I understand what you're saying. I've had people be that way too, even for me, on like a videography level, where it's like, I'll be like, oh, I make music videos. And then they're like, well, who's like the biggest artist you've worked with? And I'm like,
yeah,
you've never heard of them because they're a local Atlanta. I'm like, if you think that and I'm like, the people who make music videos for people big enough that you would have heard of them, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to make up some other job, like if I'm going to haircut and someone's like, what do you do? I'm going to say, well, I'm like a videographer, but like most of their people, they don't want to because they're tired of people asking them questions like, well, who's the biggest artist you've worked with? And like, have you ever worked with 2 Chainz? And you're just like, like that kind of thing. And you're just like, I don't know. It makes you feel like they see the only way of you having success is you have to reach this like huge height, but that's not, also another weird thing in the world of comedy that I've become aware of is that, late night TV is not a big thing anymore. In terms of your career. It's actually crazy because I've heard comedians talk about this all the time. If you're on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, or even like, when David Letterman was still around, or Conan, in the past 10 years, it has gone down significantly to where, like it used to be 50 years ago, if you were on Johnny Carson and he had you perform and everything, everybody in the whole nation knew your name the next day, and you were like the biggest comedian, and you could just call a club and be like, can I perform? And they're like, we'll pay you $10,000. Like, they wanted you there. Now you get actually more clout off of being on like Joe Rogan's podcast or some big, because people actually watch, millions and millions of people watch that. It's actually gone down to where like, but I've heard comedians talk about how their parents who are like in their 50s or 60s will be like, oh, you're on Conan? You really made it. And they're like, actually my ticket sales are doing just as bad as they did before. But then they'll be on like Joe Rogan or something like that, and then their ticket sales go through the roof. And It's because that's actually the most engaging thing these days. And I think what I'm saying is there's a distorted view when it comes to creative work, like you were saying, of like what success is. And success to me has changed so much over the past, 10 years or so. Currently, success to me is, do you pay your bills doing something creative? And for me, something creative has been a wide enough thing where I've been like, oh, I'm working for a photography studio and I'm taking checks to the bank, but I consider that to be a creative job compared to, working at a restaurant or this or that, or kind of, so I guess my point is like, to me, success is meeting your bare minimum of like what you need in life by doing something you really, really love. And for other people, they'd be like, well, no, if you're not like a, millionaire or something doing this, that's not. And I'm like, that's what it takes to be like recognizable, like the way you're talking about. Right. Anyway, I'm ranting, but point being just that it sucks working in a creative field because people don't recognize your success until it's like the highest success imaginable,
And I would say, continuing with that, like, to me now, it's, and I'm gonna sound selfish with this probably, but I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah.
I have stories in my head that come up, and I'm like, I want to tell that story.
Yeah.
Either through spot hidden, or maybe I write it out. Maybe I film something with it, with my iPhone, but I'm doing it for me, because I think in college, that was my problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it for everybody else to see. I wanted everybody else to see it, but it wasn't, and so that final year I was like, I'm not happy with this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy with my performance because I'm not doing it for myself, And so I finally came to terms with that and said, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm doing this the right way, but I'm doing it for myself. If I want to see this character, then I'm going to put it out there myself, you know? So it's just stuff like that, I think, for artists, I'm going to break the fourth wall. For the artist out there,
podcasting for that reason, you can do that.
Oh, yeah. So. Do it for yourself. Even if there's an audience out there, perform that character for yourself. Perform that character that you want to see for yourself. And the audience is going to still see that character, but in your heart, you are doing it for yourself. I don't know if that was too deep or not.
No. I mean, I think I totally agree with what you're saying. It's more like if all you're thinking about, and this goes for acting too. Like if you're an actor who you're basically in your head imagining like, well, if I do this, the audience will they'll like that. That looks good. And it's like, no, you have to get into the mind of just like the character and be like, what is their motivation? And sometimes a character's motivation is to do nothing.
Right.
Or not motivation, but their action is just like, I'm just gonna stand here.
Right.
And I remember that kind of blows your mind as an actor, especially when you start getting into film stuff. Film acting is way different from theater acting. And I remember whenever I took a film acting class and they're just like, you're doing too much. Like every time I'd be like, I'm doing half of what I did last time. And they'd be like, do 10% of that half. And I'd be like, all right. And they'd be like, Peter, you are obviously a theater actor because like your voice is loud. You use a lot of hands, you move around kind of, and I was like, this sucks that, especially if it's a tight shot, you're in like one little box and, you kind of have to communicate a lot with very little. So.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, I kind of want to maybe talk about one more thing and then we'll get towards, the end of the podcast. Okay. I usually like to kind of, because this is like an interview kind of setting, but it's also fun and conversational. We've kind of been very conversational this one, but I like to talk about like where you're from originally. And I know this, but, tell the audience, like, where are you from originally and how did you get started in the arts in general? Like, did you start playing music first or did you kind of like start doing acting or like how did you get into the creative field, like, from a young age?
So I grew up in Opelika and Auburn. Primarily, I was originally in Opelika, and then my parents divorced, and then I went back and forth from Opelika to Auburn. But I was in Auburn city schools most of my life. But so getting into acting, I was at the age of 5, and I saw the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, and my family can tell you to this day that usually a child probably at that age would either be scared or probably fall asleep.
Some gruesome stuff, especially near the end where Boromir keeps getting fucking shot with the arrows. I'm like, that's a creepy scene. Anyway, sorry.
I remember to this day standing, not sitting, but standing in the aisle watching that movie. Seeing, Moria when they go into, the mines of Moria and the music, Howard Shore's music. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And be able to be a part of a story like that, and now I want to tell that story or I want to, tell my version of something like that. And so, I went and did community theater and theater in high school. And then, of course, you and I met at Auburn University where I was there for 4 years. And I was
to kind of interject for a second. Was it hard for you to choose to be like a theater major? Because for me, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to be like several things. I was like, do I want to be like something in the arts? I was like, do I want to be like a music major as a drummer? Do I want to be like a theater major or like I even thought about like psychology or like philosophy, things like that. Were there other majors you were considering or were you like, I think theater is the thing?
Well, I've always considered myself an entertainer. I love making people smile, laugh, telling jokes and stuff, just seeing an audience's reaction. But to me, personally, I get joy out of that, and so it was always performance. Now, my senior year of high school, my mom took me out to California, to LA, because my dream was to go to USC. And the amount of money to get you there,
and then
Steven Spielberg went, and I believe George Lucas went,
that's kind of how I thought too, because I romanticized Jim Morrison from The Doors, because he went to film school there, and like I wanted to move to LA so bad. Like it sounded like something that was exactly what I wanted. Sounds like you were kind of in the same way, that you were like, that's where I need to go to make movies.
Exactly, because you sit there and because I love watching a movie, but I love it possibly a little bit more than just watching the movie, watching the behind the scenes of the movie, and hearing the director's commentary or the actor's commentary. And so I used to watch, the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings. Those are just fabulous, because 4 hours of
they documented everything.
And so they'll sit there and talk about, where they went to film school and stuff, all that, and I think, when I would watch Star Wars, they would talk about USC, how I believe it was George and Steven Spielberg who both attended USC. But I remember just kept hearing that name, and I would look it up and stuff, and I was like, man, if I'm going to be able to make a movie one day like these movies, I got to go to USC.
Yeah.
And, funny enough, you realize, a couple of years down the road, you can... Sylvester Stallone is a great example of somebody who went from literally nothing. One of my favorite, underdog stories.
Yeah.
He literally went from sleeping in a car, having to sell off his dog to,
having to do pornos.
Yeah, pornos. To, be able to eat, and had a script. And that one script he passed along to different film companies. They finally purchased it. He told them, nobody else is going to play Rocky but me. And it won his first, Oscar also. And so that, to me, I'm just like, you don't have to, it does help if you live in a big city or go to, a nice film school and stuff. But if you got the talent, if you have the heart, and the story, I mean, you can make some good art.
You just reminded me, though, that the irony, though, of Sylvester Stallone, while he was box office successful throughout like his whole career, especially the 80s, did he really make that many other movies, though, that were, like, as artistically... Like, it seemed like most of the other movies he was popular for, like Rambo, were kind of shallow. I mean, I say shallow, I mean more action-packed and less, like... I think Rocky was really the only series that he made that was, like, his thing, and it was more deep and all that. But, like, I can't remember. Did he make other movies, or was it mainly the Rocky series?
So, First Blood... He helped with, I think he possibly wrote the script.
And I'm not hating on Rambo. No, I'm just saying it's not as like, it doesn't have as much heart as Rocky does.
Well, the original ending got swiped out of the picture because of the production company. They wanted it to be a franchise, like Rocky was going to be. And so the original ending for First Blood was Rambo killing himself.
Now that would have been interesting.
Yes. And so if you think of it that way, it's more of a, wow, that's a very depressing movie. This guy goes on a rampage in the woods. He gets, his colonel who he's been looking for right in front of him, and then he takes his life, But then the company, I think, took over part 2, part 3, and you have 2 other ones. And then the last one that just came out, Rambo Last Blood, I think. The Final Blood. That one's actually pretty decent. Because it kind of harks back to that original kind of script where it's much darker. He's going to Mexico to try to get his granddaughter back, who's been kidnapped by the cartel. And, I won't spoil the story, but it's very good.
I've never seen any of them all the way through. I've always seen, like, bits of the movies, and that's no hate to Sylvester Stallone. It's just me saying, like, it's kind of funny that he became popular for Rocky, which everyone was like, he's good acting, good directing, like it's a heartfelt story and all this. And then it's like the rest of his career seemed to be like, we just want you to be ripped and shooting people. Like, we don't really care about, you having a brain and a heart. We just want you to be a big body, kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But
and I think that's just the style of the 80s. You got to that point where it was like Arnold did Conan the Barbarian, then Conan the Destroyer, and you had Rocky and then Rambo, and so people are like, these are our 2, physically physique, action-packed adventure guys. Let's put them in those type of movies.
Yeah.
And so,
you ever seen Hot Shots?
Yes.
I love Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, especially when my favorite part is when he's on the boat and he goes past his dad, who's dressed like himself from Apocalypse Now.
You know what? Like, farce movies were so popular in like the 80s, and then they were so popular in like the mid. Remember, like when like Disaster Movie and like it was like the After Scary Movie kind of wave of them, and then they just got really bad. And I feel like nobody makes farce movies anymore because they're kind of like, I don't know. Some people see it as like lowbrow humor. I think it is some of the highest brow humor though, because it's like it's a lot of wordplay. It's like Shakespearean in a way, because it's they'll like I love the whole thing on an airplane of like that's when I developed my drinking problem.
Yeah.
It's just so stupid, but it's so funny.
I agree. And I think it's also just the climate that we live in.
Yeah, that's true.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier with comedy, there's some stuff that you can't say, and
there are a lot of pretty inappropriate jokes,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even down to just like, even stuff that just like, it might involve a child or something, and you're like, we might not make that joke these days, but but anyway, was there anything else? I didn't mean to interrupt you. We were talking about, kind of like you and how you got into creative stuff. Did you feel like you kind of?
Oh yeah. No, that's the place I'm in now, and I'm very happy that we are, back to talking and
man,
doing this, and hopefully me and you can make something.
I agree, and I'm on the same page. And I was gonna say I enjoy talking to people like you who. I relate to people like you because you're not like, I can't stand talking to people who, I don't know why I say I can't stand, but like it's annoying to me when I meet somebody who's like, I'm an actor, I do nothing else, I just act. Or, I'm a singer, I just sing, that's all and I'm like, in today's world, you got to learn some other skills. And you and I both, since the last time we saw each other, it seems have kind of like expanded our repertoire of like what we're able to do, and because you have to these days. Most people these days, if you want to be an actor, a podcaster, a comedian, a musician, or anything, you also have to learn how to be like a video editor and a graphic designer in a way to make logos or posters and stuff. I mean, you guys have probably dealt with that on Spot Hidden, that it's so many little things that you want to have to make your thing look professional, but it takes forever. Like when I'm releasing a podcast episode, it's doing it all by myself. It's a lot. So, but anyway, man, I'm really bad. I think maybe it's because we're so comfortable. I've just been like rambling this whole podcast.
I forget the camera's going most of the time. I'm just talking to you.
Well, truth be told, like I think a prank I could play on somebody, and it would probably just like hurt their brain, is just like going to like a bar and then just like start talking to somebody. And then just seeing like how long they can sit there and listen to me just like ramble, because I'm really good at it. Like, just kind of like keeping the flow of the conversation going, even though they're not talking. Anyway.
I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of funny. Sketch comedy is really good to me. We should make some sketches. Like that'd be pretty fun. Not pranks, but like,
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Silly shit. Anyway, dude, it's been great to reconnect and everything, and I'm sure we'll either have you back on, or we'll be in touch, we'll be in communication.
Oh yeah,
we'll be and all that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Wait, actually, real quick before we fully sign off, because we didn't do this at the beginning, give everybody your where they can find you on social media, either Spot Hidden or personal, and Twitch and YouTube and all that, if you want to promote.
Of course.
That kind of stuff.
So you can all follow me on Instagram at huddy.hubs. I do have Facebook, but I don't get on Facebook. Instagram's the easiest for me. So Spot Hidden, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter. I don't think we have a Facebook, but Instagram or Twitter, and Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Spot Hidden. Right now we go from Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And that's pretty much the socials.
Cool.
Please give us a follow if you can,
Yeah. And I guess keep your eyes out for whatever me and Hudson end up collaborating on.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something going on.
I know.
Gonna get some content going. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much. You can follow us at PsychoActivision on Instagram and TikTok. Please subscribe to the PsychoActivision YouTube channel, because I got some problems with you people who aren't subscribing when you like and follow, or you like the video, you watch the video, and then you're like, I have a YouTube account, I don't feel like subscribing. Just do it. It means a lot more to me than it does to you. Come on. Anyway, subscribe to us. Subscribe to Hudson. It's been a good conversation.
Oh yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks.